right, welcome crew. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Hannah. I lead community and email at Growclass. So you've probably seen me in your inbox before. Hello, this is my face. Nice to meet you. If you're not familiar with Growclass, we are a 6-week growth marketing course and community filled with founders, marketers, and freelancers. We teach folks the skills they need to grow their careers and businesses. And today I'm really excited to be sharing this space with Jenn Walker Wall to learn how to simplify our job search. So Jenn is a resume writer, career coach, and the founder of Work Wonders Careers, where she helps people land new roles and thrive at work. She's also the host of the ReImagining Ambition podcast, where she speaks with mission-driven professionals about how their relationship to work and career has changed since the pandemic began. Previously, Jenn has worked at Sloan School of Management at MIT, Harvard University, and MGH, as well as she was a lecturer of sociology at Lesley University. That's awesome. I used to love sociology, so that's really cool. I'll be dropping Jenn's links in the chat for y'all, so you can connect with her there. We got her website and her LinkedIn. If you have any questions for Jenn, we do have time for a Q&A. So as we go through, feel free to put your hand up. You can use the hand up emoji at the bottom of the screen. You can unmute yourself if you feel comfortable, or you can drop your questions in the chat. Also, feel free to drop me like a private message if you're feeling a little bit shy, and I can ask on your behalf. So no worries about that. Just a reminder that this is a safe space, so there's no such thing as a dumb question. We're all here to learn, and this is a judgment-free environment. We just ask that you keep it kind and respectful to one another. Yeah, with that being said, I'm going to pass the mic over to Jenn so we can learn how to simplify our job searches. Over to you, Jenn.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Jenn. I'm really excited to chat with you about job searching today. I'm always the most excited person to talk about job searching in any room I'm in. So if that's the case today, I'm really comfortable with that. And I hope that you will take away very actionable steps and reframes to make your job search easier. And my favorite way to make the job search easier is to simply make it more effective. So let me just tell you a little bit about my background before I dive in. I started my career, and maybe some of you can relate, very much sort of by accident. I took some time off before going to get my graduate degree, and took like a job that I was just going to take for, a year or two. And I ended up staying there for several years. And what I did in that time was I fell into the hiring space. So I was working at a university and started off working with faculty who were, we were hiring adjunct and full-time faculty, and eventually moved on to staff roles as well. And one of the things that happens, and I don't know if anyone here is familiar with sort of like academia and academic job searches and what that looks like, but becoming a faculty member at a university is a bit like, I don't know, winning American Idol. It's like being a rock star. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applicants for almost any kind of faculty type role that you can imagine. And so what I learned in that very competitive space is what it took for people to stand out, not just in a small search, but in a really competitive space, sometimes in up and down markets. Really figured out what it took for people's resume or CV to kind of get them to the next step, how their interview helped or didn't help them. And to be honest, I was still thinking of this as a cool job, but it was really just sort of paying my bills. I was ended up going to grad school while I was in the job. And I left, I graduated, I got my master's. I stopped doing faculty searches for a bit and spent some time at the MIT Sloan School of Management running a research lab there, which was awesome. But I found during that time, like I actually missed being in the hiring space. And if you think about it, I always feel like hiring is where everyone's putting their best foot forward. Everyone's happy and excited at that point in the process. So I missed those interactions, and I started working with friends and writing their resumes and helping them in their job search. And then I would help their friends, and sort of Work Wonders Careers kind of grew organically out of my desire to kind of like keep my hands in the space, because I was just jazzed about what your resume and job search strategy really had the potential to unlock for you, to really change your career and ultimately change your life. So I started Work Wonders Careers on the side about a decade ago, and several years ago took it full time. So when I say I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff, like I really mean it. I spend pretty much most of my time working with active job seekers. And I'm really excited to share, some of the things I've learned from them, things I teach them, but also things I've learned from watching people job search for nearly a decade. You've got my LinkedIn here. That's probably the best place to find me. I'm there more than I should be. And you can also check out my podcast. I've actually made a couple notes in the slides of where I think it would be helpful if you want more information. I'll reference some specific episodes that you can listen to. I'd love to just get a sense of who's here. So if you want to drop some numbers in the chat, I'd love to get a sense of what your challenges are. If you are feeling unsure about where to get started and you're not really moving your job search forward, go ahead and drop a 1 in the chat. If you are scrolling for jobs, but not necessarily applying for jobs, you can drop a 2 in the chat. And feel free to drop more than one number. That's pretty common. If you're lacking confidence or direction, feel free to drop a 3 in the chat. If you're struggling to feel motivated or energized, drop a 4 in the chat. And if you're just feeling a little stalled out because you're looking around at the job market and thinking like things don't feel great right now, drop a 5 in the chat. So what do we have here? 5, 3, and 5, a 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, so we pretty much run the gamut, 1, 4, 5. So I think we've covered the spectrum here. So what I always like to say when I'm trying to, start off by taking the temperature of the room is that all of this is really normal. These are really common challenges and fears. There isn't anything here that isn't, surmountable with time and strategy. So I hope you're in really good company, and people with the exact same challenges have been overcoming them consistently, including this year when things have not felt great in the job market. So here are some things I want to chat with you about today and make sure you take away. We have a framework that we have been using. So it's sort of like the 30,000-foot view of what we do with our job search clients. And I want to share that with you today. And part of that process for clients means doing strategic, intentional things and not wasting our time on a ton of other things. Like there's a lot of ways to spend your time and energy in this process. You've probably heard people say job searching is like another full-time job. I really do not want that to be the case for my clients. So we're going to talk about why we shouldn't do that and how to avoid it. I want to share a little bit about what I'm actively seeing right now from people who are searching. And I'm happy to take your questions at any time about any of this stuff. But, given the state of the market and the world, like it's a difficult time to be searching for sure. I also really want to talk about how to manage your expectations, time, and energy in this process, because that is probably like the most impactful piece of this is how you manage yourself and how we assess people's work. How do we know if people's job search is working for them? What do we do if it's not? How do we tweak things and re-strategize? So I want to kind of expose you to that strategy as well. So I also want to just invite questions at any time. This is like a lovely intimate group. So raise your hand or unmute yourself or drop a question in the chat as we go. The first part of our process is self-reflection. And the reason we start here is that it's so easy to just want to get out of the job that you have. But really what we want to do is make sure that we have a clearer picture of what we want instead. It's not enough to just know what we don't want. If we want to be tailoring our resumes so they actually help us land interviews, if we want to make sure we're not applying to every job under the sun, but ones that we are, a good fit for and that are a good fit for us, we need to start with self-reflection. So what does this look like? How do we do this? We have, pretty standard exercises that we have most of our clients do to help them sort of reflect on what they want, what they don't want, what their core values are, with prompts and exercises and workbooks and kind of the traditional coaching experience that you might expect. And sometimes people are simply doing free writing and journaling, maybe at the end of a work day, maybe at the end of a work week, and really just kind of taking stock over like what's working and what's not working. Another thing that we have people do is look at active job postings. So if we can just put aside for a moment, like whether you think you're qualified or not, if you're someone who's struggling to get excited or motivated to actually hit submit or to look for a new job, I think that's totally valid. A lot of times people experience terrible things at work, and it's really easy to feel like there isn't something better out there for you. But if we can take some time and just look at active job postings and see what's intriguing to us, what postings that are intriguing might have in common, we can really potentially paint a much clearer picture of what could work for us and kind of give our job search a North Star. Another piece that's really important here is you want to be writing this down. I don't know if you've ever started your job search and then 4 weeks later, even if you've done things, even if you've had good insights or submitted applications, you feel like you have to start from scratch. I'm a big fan of documenting and tracking things, even if what you're doing is learning, even if what you're doing is just the reflection piece. You want to give yourself credit for the work you're doing along the way. You want to be able to take a look at your insights and reference them. And I just find that given the emotional ups and downs of the job search process, it's a lot easier to do that when you've captured them in black and white. Now, here's what I like to consider my minimum viable self-reflection process before we start a job search. So I like to ask the question, what are you most proud of? This question often, I ask this when I work on people's resumes, it will almost always generate content that is not represented on people's resumes. So it's kind of amazing what this gets at. And sometimes even when the content is on the resume, it's not positioned nearly as impactfully. So really taking stock of what you've done and thinking of maybe 2 or 3 examples of what you're most proud of can really help solidify sort of the strengths and impact of your resume, but also help you ground your job search, from a place of confidence, which isn't always easy. And then I always like to ask, what do you want more of and what do you want less of? It's always really easy to figure out what you want less of. You can look around at your current job and be like, not that, not that, not that. But what we really want to think too, along with that is well, what would be better for you? What are you looking for instead? And the clearer that we can get here and the more obvious we can make our own priorities, the easier we'll be able to align our time with opportunities that are going to be a match for us. And then finally, I think it's so important to ask yourself, what kind of environment or culture do you need? I think probably 85% of the clients I see, the reason they're leaving their current job or things aren't working out boils down to how they're being treated in their current role. And whether it's just a relational mismatch between them and their manager, or they're just not getting sort of the promotion and growth opportunities that they're looking for. I think it's really important that all of us take stock about, where do we do our best work? What do we need to survive and thrive in the workplace? Where have you thrived previously, right? What did you have at your disposal to make sure that that happened? That will also help make us more aware of what to look for as we move through this process. So even if you are someone who's really eager to land a new opportunity, you wanted a new job yesterday, I want to encourage you to hit pause and really spend a little bit of time here to make sure that your job search is kind of taking off from a place of clarity and intention. And when I say clarity, I don't mean you should know everything about your next job, but you should have a sense, you should have an outline, right, that we can sort of color in as we go. I consider being able to talk about and describe and name the types of roles that you're considering a milestone in this process. It's going to make communicating to your peers and colleagues a lot easier when you're activating other eyeballs for your search and looking for other support for your search. It'll give you focus. We just want enough clarity to have focus. We don't want you applying for every job that's posted. We want you to be able to be judicious and have some criteria, right? So it helps you can set priorities for your job search. Doing this work, we're really taking stock of ourselves and our contribution. It also helps us lay the foundation for compelling content and stories that we will need throughout the job search and hiring process, right? Eventually we're going to have to talk about ourselves, and eventually we're going to have to write a resume and update our resume. So really taking the time to kind of do the brainstorm and the internal work here. That's the great thing about this stage, is we don't have to worry about how it's positioned. This is a place to be honest with yourself. It's not to impress anyone or even to connect with anyone. It's for your benefit. I do in the ReImagining Ambition podcast, I talk a little bit about this in episode 11, cultivating career alignment. So if you think you could use more help really thinking about what you need and want out of your next job, I would take a listen to that episode. And once we've done that, once we've done sort of like the internal brain dump and internal work of getting clear both on what we want and what we're bringing to the table, then it's time to really think about how to communicate that externally. And this is where our focus shifts from, okay, this is internal work, to like, we're doing this for someone else. Now we have an audience that we really need to think about. And there's a tendency in job seekers to really not think too much about the audience and what their experience is like. So I want you to think right now about like all the layoffs we've seen, a ton of recruiting teams have really been decimated. So when there are jobs that they're hiring for, a lot of those people are quite busy. Like they have more requisitions, jobs to hire for than they did previously. So a lot of our strategy here is about making it really easy and obvious to see your qualifications for the job at hand. So let me just kind of walk you through what that looks like quickly. I really want you to pay attention to what the jobs require. What are the qualifications? A lot of our clients and job seekers will just focus on the responsibilities. And that makes all the sense in the world if you're trying to assess if you might want the job or not. But what I actually recommend is that you consider what they're asking for, because what they're asking for people to have is what we need to demonstrate on the resume. Your resume is about demonstrating your qualifications for the role. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I almost said Sarah, but you're not Sarah. Sorry. And the second thing we want to do, there's this tendency to think if we don't meet all of the requirements perfectly or literally, like we shouldn't bother at all. And honestly, if you're wildly underqualified or unqualified, that might be the case. We can talk more about that in a second. But what I really want clients to do, and what I find they struggle to do, is communicate their qualifications, to understand their transferable skills and reposition that in a way that's going to make sense to the reader on the other end without them having to do any of that work. So I always like to ask the question, how are you qualified? And let me just give you a couple of examples that demonstrate how this happened. I was working, I had this one client who was lovely and was looking for a new job, sent me a job posting, and that one of the requirements was a master's degree in public health, policy, or law. And this person was like, I don't have any of those. Should I still apply for the job? And what this client did have was a medical degree. She was a practicing physician looking to leave medicine. And I said, you know what? We're going to assume that your, MD and medical work experience is sufficient when they're asking for a master's degree. I also had a client who was a consultant and wanted to pivot into HR. And she was like, I don't have any HR experience, which was technically true, but what she did have was experience hiring, training, doing compensation. Like these are some things that she was actually consulting on. So being able to kind of spell out those domains of HR in her applications was really helpful to demonstrating her qualifications, even if she didn't check those boxes perfectly. So I want you to really just, if you're jumping to the conclusion, making the assumption, that you're not qualified, at least do yourself the service of, how am I qualified for this job? And then finally, one of my most controversial resume takes is that you should write your resume like a human being is going to read it. I do not think about applicant tracking systems like at all when it comes to writing resumes, and I haven't for the last 10 years. Might that change in the future? It might change in the future, but I have used applicant tracking systems. If you have ever applied for a job online, filled out kind of the web form and then uploaded your resume, chances are you've interfaced with an applicant tracking system. And really what they helped me and help other folks in hiring and recruiting do is manage the process, manage the applicants, move people around, send bulk messages, that sort of thing. They weren't making decisions on our behalf. They were helping us manage it. So we're going to keep the reader in mind. And that means we want to think about white space. We want to think about, succinct bullet points, making sure things are snappy to read, snappy for busy people to read. So this is a marketing manager role. I just swiped a list of qualifications, and this is actually a pretty entry-level role. And it's okay, it's tiny. What I want you to take away is there's a lot here. Don't worry about the specifics right now. I just want to point out a couple of things I see when I look at a list of qualifications like this. I see a minimum years of experience requirement, so not much, 2 years. I see some what I would just call technical skills, Adobe, Microsoft, MailChimp, even if they're, easy tech skills. That's still how my brain categorizes them. And then we have some like other personal attributes. So organizational time management, work well under deadlines, energetic, flexible, right? I also see global. So I see areas of, other areas of expertise. So what I would see here, designing and marketing communication materials, print, web, digital, social media, right? So my brain sort of consolidates them into those categories, because what we do here is we use something called the summary of qualifications. And this strategy helps us tailor the resume for each job that our clients are applying for. And where the summary of qualifications goes, if you have like an objective statement or a personal summary on your resume, it's probably right underneath your contact and header information and above anything else. And that's exactly where this summary of qualifications should live. And the reason that we do this is because we want to make sure that the people who are reading our resumes see the most relevant, salient aspects of our experience first. And so it really helps frame the narrative. For marketers in the room, we consider this like market segmentation, just making sure the right person sees the right message at the right time. And this can be really powerful. Yesterday, I was working with a client who was a software engineer who had a background both in health tech and in gaming. And so we made two separate resumes together with different summary of qualifications, because on one, we could highlight his amazing experience developing health tech products. And on the other end, we could have one where he talked about his extensive experience in gaming. And it just really helps frame what the reader is seeing and helps them see what they need to see to hopefully move you, as we say, like to the yes pile here. So I like to use some of these prompts, the number of years of experience, 2+ years plus, 2+ years, designing, marketing, and implementing communications across print, web, and digital. That was taken right from the job posting, right? Then demonstrated ability to, another line, or set of qualifications taken from the job posting. Confident user of, the list of software used in the job posting. So this really helps us make sure that what we're putting in front of recruiters, and to a lesser degree hiring managers, is extremely relevant and tailored.
I have a question, Jen, if it's
Yeah,
okay.
sure, of
So
course.
would the summary of qualifications replace something like, I know people have like a profile that they have when
Profile
they
summary.
start.
Yeah.
So this is replacing that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Depending on sort of what that profile looked like, you might be able to tailor or repurpose parts of that. I often do when I'm, when clients hire me to do their resume.
Yeah.
But what I find is that the profile or the personal summary is about you, and this is about how you meet the qualifications of the job. And sometimes those personal summaries or profiles are too vague, too all-encompassing. Like you can imagine, like if you think of my software engineer client, like it's hard to have a personal summary that positions you as an expert in health tech and gaming at the same time.
Yeah.
And so being able to really distill that messaging can be really helpful. Now, you may be someone, on occasion, I have clients who have like a very specific, clear niche and expertise, and their growth is very linear. And I think the degree to which they'll need to tailor this is significantly less than other clients. But about 90% of my clients, because they're making some kind of pivot or pursuing growth, like really want to make sure that they're tailoring this narrative well.
Okay. So you'd recommend having profile and then the summary of qualifications in that case?
And get rid of the profile.
Okay. Because one of my friends, she's like working in data science, or she wants to get into data science, but she's doing like coding for like another company, and she thinks that it's not parallel, so she's having a hard time mentioning those skills. So when she sent me her resume, interesting that she didn't have like that kind of stuff. I guess she's thinking that would be in the cover letter. So that's cool. I'll let her know.
And it's in the cover letter. I mean, and I'm not going to talk too much about cover letters unless people have specific questions, but typically what I do in the cover letter is give more concrete examples of like what this work has looked like. And the other way I think of this, and you'll be able to tell I used to teach college, is that the summary of qualifications is like the thesis statement that appears at the front. That's like, here's what you're going to see. And then the experience bullet points are going to be sort of the evidence that reinforces this, right? Where we can really get into specifics.
Gotcha. I see we have another hand up. I
Yeah.
will go on mute.
Jen, hey, thanks so
Hey,
much for all this.
sure.
Hey, so really quick, I like 2 seconds. I was gonna ask, like sometimes people put like a little professional kind of like summary at the top of their resume, like, hey, this is what I have, this is this is what I'm kind of looking for. Do you recommend that at all, or just to not even put that?
Well, I think some of the content that you shared, you just mentioned, should be on your resume. So there's a
Yeah.
few different
Right.
let me just talk about some variations here on the summary of
Yeah.
qualifications that might be helpful. I don't use any language other than maybe some of these prompts: demonstrated ability to, confident user of,
Okay.
X years of
Yeah.
experience in. That's what I use over and over again. But
Okay.
everything else that's here is tailored to the specific qualifications of the job. Now, for more senior candidates, and I'm talking people with 18, 20 years of experience, what I'll do in addition to this is
Hmm.
add like areas of expertise that are also tailored to the job. So if you've ever seen like a categories or themes mentioned in like columns, not
Yeah.
necessarily like the column feature, just like that's something I sometimes pair with a summary of qualifications. For engineers, like we'll include their languages and infrastructure and like all of that. Another option, instead of this, like this is a pretty junior person. This is a person who doesn't have a ton of work experience. But another thing that I'll do is I'll just add like a technical skills section underneath the summary of qualifications. So if you have a very lengthy, tech stack that you want to share, we can pull it
Hmm.
out of the summary of qualifications and give it its own place to live. So that kind of technical skills section would not necessarily need to be changed for each job. I just alphabetize the list so that people can find what they're looking for. And there's a few different things that you could do or might want to do. But I think the real takeaway and what makes this useful is the degree that it matches the job that you are
Hmm.
applying.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks so much, Jen.
Sure. Yeah. So let me just say a couple of other things. We have really, our clients have good luck applying for jobs cold online. I would say probably 90% of our clients ultimately accept offers from jobs that they applied for cold online. Now, I think if you've got a network, if you're willing to network, you should not sleep on that's a great long-term strategy. But it is possible to get traction applying online. And I have this episode 13, I talk about the 3 things our clients do to consistently land interviews. So if you're stuck at this place where you're submitting applications and you're not seeing anything for it, it's time to rethink what you're doing, because even our clients in tech are landing interviews in very crowded spaces at very competitive employers. And it's because we take the time to make sure that we're using the right, most relevant language. When I say manage your expectations, like we ask our clients to apply to between 4 to 8 targeted, tailored jobs per month for at least 2 months before we make any significant changes to a resume or to the job search strategy. The consistency here is really important. And sometimes people will use their resume once or twice, get a quick rejection and be like, it's not working. Your resume needs to be used consistently. We have absolutely no idea what's going on the other end. Positions could be frozen. It could be going to someone internally. The whole thing could be canceled or put on hold. The hiring manager could be on sick leave. Like there's a million things that could slow your progress down in any given, hiring process that have absolutely nothing to do with you. So we sort of want to factor that in and really focus on consistency. Another thing is, we don't have this like spray and pray approach where people are focused on volume. Fewer, better applications does the trick for most of our clients. And I also really encourage people to make this an iterative process where you get better over time. Like the summary of qualifications is like a very specific kind of abbreviated, abrupt way of writing. And it takes clients like 3 to 5 applications to really kind of nail it and to be able to do it efficiently. So allow yourself some time to practice as you go through here. Yeah, I would listen to episode 13 if you are not getting traction with your applications. I actually just posted it yesterday. I think it tells you everything our clients are doing to consistently land interviews, and they do when they follow those things. And when they're not following those things, it's because it will impact them in the interview phase. Okay, any other questions about resume? And we can always come back to this too. So I can keep going for now. Yeah, Ariba.
I was just wondering about the length of the summary of qualifications because in your example, it was 4 bullet points. I'm just wondering what that would look like on the resume itself. Would you keep it as a paragraph? Is 4 bullet points like a good length for you? Should it be bullet points?
Great question. Great question. I love bullet points. So I prefer to do these bulleted rather than in paragraph form. I think it's just easier to read quickly. And I say between 3 and 5 bullet points max. I have clients who have done 6 bullet points before, and have had success with that. But for me, I think the brevity of it is also why it works. The point is to make it really easy to see your qualifications really quickly. And so if anything starts getting too lengthy or there's too many lines of text, people can kind of get lost in that. So do you have some flexibility beyond 5 bullet points? Probably. But remember, the point is to keep it brief and concise and to the point.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great question. I could probably just spend an hour talking just about summary of qualifications. So thanks for being interested. Okay, so once we have a strategic resume template and we have a little direction, it's time to actually be engaging in the job search. Episode 9 talks a little bit about this, particularly about navigating your job search and career in challenging times, which it seems what we're in currently and probably will be for a bit. So here's what I look for to help people get their job search off the ground. I want you to get really clear on how you're going to use your time. I've seen people set aside hours in a given day. And like I said, that's not really going to be helpful. You want jobs that you are well qualified for, actually interested in. You want to take your time doing the application. So spending 8 hours a day scrolling LinkedIn or Indeed or anywhere on the internet for jobs is probably not going to be a good use of time for most of you here. So get really specific. Draft a summary of qualifications, find 2 jobs to apply for this week. And I think you'll move through this process much more quickly. I also encourage people to kind of make peace with the fact your energy is going to go up and down. And where you can, try to seek alignment between capacity and task. Can you scroll through jobs while watching Real Housewives? Yes, you can. Should you be, tailoring your application and writing a cover letter while doing that? Maybe not. Maybe that's a high capacity task. So try to give yourself some options if you're just having a day and don't have 100%. Something that's a tough pill for ambitious, hardworking people to swallow is that you may not need a lot of time to get something done. So I really want to encourage you to think about 20-minute blocks of time. We love to use timers in our community and with our clients because it's just a good way to add structure so that we're not letting the process take longer than it needs to be. I write resumes every single week, and I could overthink them as well if I didn't have deadlines to return resumes to clients. So it's a hard thing to do. If you're struggling to really start your job search, and I mean, maybe you're scrolling for jobs, maybe you're emailing yourself jobs, but you're not really creating opportunities for interaction either through networking or applying for jobs, then you have more of what we call a job browse than a job search. And an exercise we have clients do is, when they're protecting themselves from feeling like either potentially going to be rejected, is to pursue failure. So if you're worried that your job search will be a waste of time or you're never going to land a new job, I just say go ahead and run with that, but apply for jobs while you're doing that. And so we've helped people sort of iterate and improve their own resume while pursuing failure and pursuing rejection, often landing interviews along the way. We want to encourage people to set flexible goals. I think the most time and energy people generally spend in their job search is when they are interviewing for multiple jobs at any given time. That's a huge drain on your actual time, your energy. And we don't expect you to be applying to 4 to 8 targeted roles when you're in the thick of it. So be flexible with yourself. Things can kind of change, in a moment's notice here. And you want to be responsive to that. I also think whatever fears, concerns, and questions you have are really important to unearth and say out loud. So whether you're working with a coach or you have friends and peers around you, I really encourage you to just say it out loud. I think things get so much easier when a client says, I'm worried there aren't any good jobs left. Okay, that's a common fear. Actually, lots of people are afraid of that. So people are finding jobs even when their fear is there. But I think keeping it to yourself can really kind of give it a lot more energy than it needs. Again, we want to focus on those opportunities for interaction. So when a client's feeling like their job search is just not going anywhere, like I'll ask, who did you email? What jobs did you apply for? Which people did you reach out to try to get and see, like, are we creating those opportunities for interaction? And of course, we want to focus on consistency and output. There's this tendency, I've done this too when I've looked for jobs, to like just hit reload in your inbox or like to stare at your phone and see if anyone's calling you. But I really want people to shift into focusing on their output. That's the piece of this puzzle that we have control over, and we have no idea what's going on the other side. So the degree that you can continue to create opportunities for yourself is going to be good for you in the long run. Now let's talk a little bit about connection here. You might think of this as networking. I think of this as like fuel for your job search, essentially. I think people who do this alone often do so at their own peril, like being around other people. You guys understand the value of community, right? And so I just want to say a couple of things about relationships and connection and the role that they can play in your job search. A lot of times people will, especially people who are feeling a sense of urgency or panic, will want to talk to people about specific jobs, or, you know, think that if they talk to the right person, they'll get the job. That's a really high bar for most of these relationships, especially if they're new relationships or relationships that don't even exist yet. So I really want you to think about learning, like what can you learn from people? What experience can people share? Asking questions is just as valuable because it's going to help us end up in the right job. So I don't think about networking in terms of how do I get a job, but like, how do I learn more? How do I position myself? How do I have the right conversations? Those things can be really valuable too. The other thing a lot of job seekers forget is that you bring a lot of value to your network and to your potential network, even if you are looking for something right now. So I wouldn't overthink, you know, that you're only in a place of need. Like, remember that you have experience to add that people will be looking for as well. Yes, that's exactly right. Make it easy. That's really what your resume is about. It's about, you know, what networking is about, is like, how can you make it easy for people to say yes? That's really what we want to do. And one of my favorite ways to kind of connect and expand our networks is to look at our friends network, like who are our second, third, fourth degree connections. Those can be helpful. People who share our interests or identities or geographic locations, like something where there's something in common, is a great way to start building organic relationships. I want to talk a little bit about care, and I mean both self-care and community care. You know, especially in the last few years, their job search has been competing with a whole host of things. So I want to remind you that one of the reasons that we don't, besides the fact that we don't think it would be effective or strategic, like we want you to have a life while you job search, because it will help you fuel your job search. It will help you sustain your job search. We don't need to like put off vacations or time off or fun things until after we land a new job. It'll make your current situation more tolerable, most likely, and it'll make your job search more selective and strategic to do things like rest and honor your values while you are engaged in the process. All right, so good timing here. We're coming all the way back around. We've started with self-reflection and we're moving back around to assessment. So assessment is self-reflection plus action, essentially. Now we have something that we can evaluate. So I want you to make sure that you are tracking your work. Assessing your work is much easier if you have some data, some information to actually look at. And if you're not doing that, make sure that you're documenting what you're learning. That can be helpful. So if you're much more exploratory, maybe you're not an active, engaged job seeker, you're more of like, thinking big picture about what your next move is, I still think it's really worthwhile to write down what you're learning, write down insights from the conversations that you're having, so that when you are trying to figure out if it's time to move forward, you have some wisdom that you can leverage in that process. And of course, it's really important to give yourself permission to begin. So a lot of times when people come here, this is where we figure out, well, it's been 3 months and you've applied for 2 jobs. Like the volume's not quite there. Why is that? Can we kind of get in there? Sometimes people are really just not engaging, not doing their thing. Worrying about the job search, thinking about the job search, that can take up so much time and space. Ruminating about the job search could absolutely be a more than full-time job. But it's not actually a job search, right? It's not the action that's required to move you forward. So a lot of times people count time on the job search as time they spend thinking about it, but it's really time we spend doing these things that will help us move forward in the ways that are going to ultimately be helpful. Just want to put this together for you so that you can kind of see how we think about this. Like I am always thinking this is a non-linear process, because at any point you could land an interview, at any point you could get a promotion, at any point, you know, things could change for you, right? But we really want to make sure that we have some initial clarity that's going to make us strong applicants when we go to revise our resume and apply online. We want to make sure we're doing our part to be consistent, to practice, you know, moving forward imperfectly, to not set the bar too high, but to really focus on our output, at least for the first several weeks, without, you know, thinking too much about when or if we're hearing back. We want to be taking care of ourselves and the people around us. And then once we've done that for a few weeks at a time, we want to see what results are. And we can kind of keep fine-tuning this and coming back to these places and making adjustments as we go. And that's why I think of it more as a cycle rather than just like a point A to point B. It's just not, it's not as simple as that. And if people find themselves repeating things in the job search process, that's normal. That could be a good sign in some cases. So just wanted to kind of offer what I think this looks like altogether. I Googled stock images of job searching, and I really thought these were dramatic and overwrought, but I showed them to some clients, and clients were like, no, this is actually what it's like. So I always like to show these pictures. Like, this demonstrates the toughness, right? Like the one guy's in a rock in the middle of the ocean, another guy's in a desert. Like this can feel really tough. The job search can really feel insurmountable. And you could be closer than you think at any given time. Like that's the thing about being consistent, is like you will have things out there percolating on your behalf, maybe that you've forgotten about, maybe that you've written off. New things can pop up, right? That's another thing, is maybe the right job for you just hasn't been posted yet. So I always like to kind of leave this webinar or on that note of like, it might feel really tough and impossible now. Nobody gets to start this process really without experiencing some of that feeling, but it doesn't mean that your job search is doomed or will last forever. It often means you just have to keep going. Let me just leave up this graphic. This is the podcast. I'm happy to take any questions or review any of the slides. But I just want to thank you all for listening, and I'd be happy to connect with any of you on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to spend the next few minutes. Look, it looks like Julianne. Yeah, Julianne.
Oh, hi. Thanks so much for the session. It's been great. I just had a question for you. So I've been in the job market for a while this year, and I have been catfished a couple of times. And I'm just wondering if you had clients who have had these experiences with these jobs being posted. I've had times where I've interviewed with people for a job and it wasn't actually a job for the company that you thought it was. It was like, it's been really wild, and it's frustrating. And I'm just wondering if you've had clients who've been experiencing any of this. It seems to be a lot more out there now.
You know, I do not have clients who have experienced this, but I have gotten this question a lot on webinars that I do. So I know for sure that it's happening. I don't think it's just you at all. And I don't know fully what to attribute that to. I will say I'm extremely nosy, and yeah, you're a great candidate. I would be careful about, like, if you're posting your resume on places, I think it's worth doing a little bit of research if you've never heard of the company and organization before. But I don't think you're alone in that. I've heard of that happen. I haven't seen it with clients, but I've definitely heard of it happening.
Okay. Yes. And I guess my only thing I would say to the team or to the folks on this call is, as frustrating as it is, it's one of those things, as you said, you just kind of have to realize it's the process. And so everything, you kind of just got to work through it. Sometimes it's frustrating, but you just have to kind of work through that process and move on and try to get yourself back up for the next thing to be able to keep pushing forward.
Yes, I often say on these webinars and to clients, like, people's job search doesn't last longer than I think it will, but it always lasts longer than they want it to, which I think is an important distinction. Like, I think sometimes people don't, whether it's their own job search or a reflection of the market or some combination of both. Sometimes I think people just need more time than they realize. So managing your expectations. And I also just want to say, in case this is helpful to hear, I've seen people do things like take on consulting work, take on retail jobs to like sustain their job search. And that can be a really tough pill to swallow. And like, I don't think we're living in a fair economy. I don't know where everyone is. So I'm in the US. I don't think things are fair. And I don't think it's right or just that people have to do that. But I do really want to encourage you to think about, like, what do you need to sustain yourself in this time? And I've yet to hear a response to that I don't think is a good idea. So whether it's like part-time work so that your savings doesn't like go out the door every month, or taking, some people have moved back. Like, I've seen a lot of things. So I just want to say that, like, I hope everyone is taking care of themselves in the way that they need, because it's tough out there.
I have a question as well. I have two questions, actually. So my same friend that I was talking about, who's the data scientist, well, she's trying to get into data science. We were talking about transferable skills, and I was saying, obviously, I think that she does have enough transferable skills, but she's thinking that she needs to do like a boot camp. At what point would you think, like, in the job searching process, that, okay, maybe you do need to do a boot camp for those hard skills to have it on your resume? Like, how important is it to have that, like, piece of, like, I guess, education piece on your content, on your resume, for her to be able to, like, at what point is it like, okay, no, it's not the transferable skills, I should go do a boot camp?
This might be another controversial take, but I don't think boot camps are like a magic silver bullet for most people's job searches, especially in a really tough market, because there's a lot of very well qualified people on the market looking for the job. And I don't like, the boot camp will give you the skills, but it might not give you the experience, in general, but also based on what is possible in the market at this point. So I always say, if you want, like, a lot of my clients are lifelong learners, and I'm not here to dissuade anyone from growing their skills, but I would be careful about thinking it's going to, solve all of your job search problems. So what I would do is I would take a good look at the qualifications on, a sample of the data roles that she's looked at. What are they asking for in terms of qualifications? Take it very literally. People do all kinds of things when they look at that list of qualifications. Are they asking for someone with professional paid years of experience? Because a boot camp is probably not going to give you that, right? They might give you the technical skills, but they're not going to give you that experience. So if you're running into that point, and one of the things I talk about in the resume podcast episode is that our clients are applying primarily to jobs that they're well qualified for. And I would say it's a difficult time to make a huge career transition if you're not well qualified, and if those skills aren't transferable. Now, I don't know anything about what your friend is doing now, what the skills are, and like, it may be very relevant. Like, she may be getting to use some of those skills. And if that's the case, spelling that out would probably be the best bet. And sometimes people don't know that they have transferable skills because they're kind of in the weeds of their own current work, and sometimes they're not transferable skills. So it could be either or some combination of both.
Yeah, I'll have to send her the recording, because I know that she works with coding, but there's so many languages and stuff that I like not too sure. But I'll send her this recording for sure, because she can make it. Sure. And my follow-up question is also a little bit controversial, I think. How do you feel about using AI for job search, like people who use AI to help them build a resume or write their cover letter?
A lot of our clients, I would say most of our clients, are not using AI. I mean, part of that has to do with some of the resources we give people. I I'm fine with it. So I think where I fall on this is that, you know, if you're not working with a coach, if you're doing this on your own, you're not working with a resume writer, I think there is AI that can help you start to like articulate and do like help you understand what the qualifications are and speak directly to that. I haven't seen an AI generated resume that I think is as good as what our clients are writing themselves. That's really where I land. And just today on LinkedIn, like I was reading a post by a hiring manager about how cover letters are all sounding exactly the same. And so I just think it's we actually have a client whose product is an AI for applying to jobs. I think it's creating a lot of like similar sounding content, which may not be advantageous for a whole host of reasons. So I think it could be better than nothing. But I also think that developing your own sense of alignment and what that looks like is a very powerful skill. Oh, I'd have to see. I don't even think I liked it. I was just like, I'm not surprised.
You might be lost in the LinkedIn.
Yeah, totally lost in the scroll.
Oh, damn. Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was great. I'll let anyone else
Yeah.
ask questions. So I took up some time there.
No worries.
On the floor. Any final questions from folks? You feel free to use the chat as well if you are thinking about it. All right. I think we're good. Well,
Awesome.
Jen, thank you so much for this session. Great information here. Really super helpful. I'll be dropping your links in the chat again for everyone. So Jen's website, her LinkedIn, and I grabbed her podcast link as well. So you can find those episodes that she mentioned here. I'll be sending this replay out to everyone via email, put it up on YouTube as well. So you'll find all the links there. If you were scrambling to write notes, don't worry about it. You'll have the replay. Yeah. Thank you all for joining today. And thank you again, Jen. It was a great session. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Good luck with your searches.
Yes,
Bye,
good luck.
Drew.
Bye.
Thank you.